So today I am super excited to show you guys what I have in store for you. As you can probably tell from the title, this is going to be some pretty crazy stuff. And I've been working on this project for the last month or so, and so I'm just going to go over in this video the process of how I made this awesome naturalistic outworld for my Pheidole rhea, and just go over some awesome clips of it, the whole process and everything. So be sure to stay tuned. Hopefully you guys enjoy this, and yeah, let's get into it. So, of course, everything started with this 55-gallon tank that I got used off of OfferUp, and I decided to use this as my vessel for the project. I figured 55 gallons was probably enough. Pheidole rhea colonies get massive, well into the six digits of workers. I don't know if I'm ever going to get my colony that large. I'm at least tens of thousands hoping for. But with this tank being 4 feet long, I figured that this would be a perfect amount of space for them and for them to create some of their awesome trails that you see in the wild. So that's why I went with 55 gallons. It seems huge, especially for ants, but yeah, it should be just about perfect for them. Now, I started this build with this Styrofoam Facade that you can see here. And the reason why I went with Styrofoam is not only that it was really easy to carve out and get the sort of patterns, designs that I really wanted for it, but also it's lightweight so that when I needed to move the tank, it was not an issue with weight and everything. If I would have just made a facade out of like rocks, it would have ended up weighing way too much. So here I just took the styrofoam, carved out some holes for, I was going to put some cacti in the back, which I ended up doing. So I put some holes for the cacti and then just did some, nice facade work, getting some structure. And it doesn't look perfect because it doesn't need to. It just needs to have some support for the layer of ultracal and other detailing that goes over it. So we've got the styrofoam done. I ended up placing in some sticks that I found just to sort of get an idea of how everything would look. I did end up taking those out while I was doing the first couple of coats, which I will get into now. Now, this was 2 coats of Ultracal 30. It's a type of gypsum cement. I use it for everything, including my nests, which you can find on ArthropodAntics.com. And as you can see, things got a little messy. That's just how it worked. I just mixed up a big bucket of it, and I actually did 2 coats of it. I think I said that. And I just poured it over top. I let it harden a little bit so it got sort of mushy, and I could get it in all the cracks. And so there was nothing there. You can see, got it all up on the sides so that there was nothing. Basically, I wanted no styrofoam exposed, and I was able to do that with just 2 layers of this plain ultracal. And then after that, I went ahead and did a detail layer for the 3rd layer. And the details went amazing. So what I did is I just used some more ultracal, but I mixed it with a whole bunch of sand so that it had more texture and a darker color. And so then I just took this mix, and it was really thick, this mix of ultracal and sand, and I went over the whole scape, got everything covered up, all any white patches of uncovered ultracal. And then I even went on top of that and sprinkled some gravel, some more sand, just to really get everything textured and covered. And then, as you can see, I also embedded some larger stones in the side, and finally added in my roots again. After I had the whole sort of scape mostly finished, I then added in my cacti. I have 2 different species of pincushion cacti. I do not know what either species of them are, but I figured that they would be perfect for this project because they don't require all that much soil. I did put some soil in the little holes that I made for them. But the main thing is that they don't require very much water, because if I had to have a plant that needed wet dirt all the time, the ants would end up trying to nest in that dirt. Where with the cacti, they don't need very much, so the dirt that is in there will not be wet for very long, and the ants should hopefully not try to nest in it. Now, the next thing that I had to do was drill a hole in the side of the tank to hook their nest up to. And I made sure I got my glass drill bits, and I practiced drilling on an old 10-gallon tank that I had, and it went perfectly. No problems. Holes went right through. I was using the water that you're supposed to do with glass drilling. And then I moved to the main tank and completely shattered the side of it. I think that it's because the tank was used and was, since it was used as an actual aquarium before and held water, that glass was probably stressed from the water pushing on it, which had it caused all this internal stress for it and ended up making it crack when I drilled it, which was really a huge bummer, but it was not the biggest issue, and you'll see in the end that it worked out. So it sucked that that side of the tank is a little uglier now, but overall not the worst thing that could have happened during the project. Moving on from that, the next thing that I had to do was a bit of acrylic work, uh, and that you'll see here, I made a nice lip around the top of the tank, and this is to apply an upside down barrier on, because with aquariums, the corners of the tank have a line of silicone that if you try to apply a barrier on, the ants will just crawl right over it anyway. So the upside down barrier serves a dual purpose. Not only is it just a much more secure barrier than trying to put it directly on the wall of the tank, but also with it being upside down, it's a lot harder for the ants to actually get over it. And that'll be useful for when this colony is huge and inevitably trying to escape all the time. Now, one more piece of acrylic work that I did is I cut a piece of acrylic to size with the broken piece of glass so that it fit over it perfectly and siliconed it to that side just as an extra measure to make sure that that glass didn't end up falling apart, or if one of the little cracked pieces flew out, then the ants wouldn't be able to get out. And I cut the acrylic for not only this side but also the lips with a circular saw. I used I think a 48 tooth saw blade. You just want a high tooth saw blade, and it cuts really easily, which was very nice. And the last thing that I needed was a stand. So I got a pretty cheap table on OfferUp, and it just was perfect. The perfect length, perfect height. I love it, and it just makes the tank stand out so much more and just looks. It definitely rounded off the project very well. And here is the finished product. I am so happy with how it turned out. Some extra little details that I did is I covered the entire bottom of it with a nice fine sand, the same that I used when mixing with the Ultracal. So you'll see that the bottom of the tank looks much better than it did in the previous picture showing after the scape. And also, after the Ultracal sort of dried and hardened, the scape is a lot lighter in coloration, which I am a big fan of. And then I also added in on the bottom left corner, you can see a horseshoe, which I found just out in the desert, just this old rusty horseshoe, and I think it looks great. I love it. Finally found something to do with it. It's been sitting in my house since February, and now it's found its home back in the desert. So love that. Love the way the tank turned out. Let's get into the ants. So the next thing that I had to do was get my ants ready. So there you can see they were in their new nest, which is a Tar Heel Ants XL Labyrinth from their mini labyrinth. See, they made this awesome trail through their outworld to explore their new space. And the nest was pretty crowded, but eventually they moved in. Here you can see them in the new nest. They absolutely loved it. Um, just awesome brood piles. The nest has great visibility. I love it, and it's got so much more space for them to grow into. It won't last them forever. I will need to end up attaching more nests for them eventually, and I have a plan for how to do that, so stay tuned in the future for when I end up making a nice nest stacking system for them. So yeah. And here we have, after the move, the ants exploring their outworld. Now, we did have some stubborn individuals who, well, I had to take some drastic measures to get out of the old nest, but it did work out in the end. They ended up moving over all of their seeds, well, I did that after they moved all the brood, but got some of the last stubborn workers out of there, all the seeds, managed to just totally get the nest cleaned out, and they had some awesome trails going back and forth from their new nest to the old nest to get everything out of it. Now, as a housewarming gift for these guys, watching them trail throughout their new tank so nicely, I decided to give them a big old pile of their favorite seeds, and they went to town. As you can see here, they're just trailing super nicely. This species, the reason, like I said, why I gave them such a big tank in the first place is because of those awesome trails. And they are just absolutely using this space as I hoped they would. Just trailing back and forth, going crazy for any food that I'm giving them. And as you will probably have noticed, I did put a liquid feeder on the opposite side of the little ridge from their nest, and it ensures that there's always workers just trailing back and forth from their nest all the way across the tank to the liquid feeder, trailing up and down to get seeds. And you'll see in a minute some clips of them going at some crickets and stuff. Just awesome. I'm so incredibly happy with how this tank turned out, and I'm so excited to see how they use it when the colony gets much, much larger than they are right now. Now, for a while after I moved them into this tank, the majors were a bit hesitant to forage, and this isn't super surprising. This species, while they have enormous majors, they don't produce a whole ton of majors. The colony is probably at around 1,000 workers right now, and have maybe 50 majors, which isn't a whole lot. But once I got some crickets out in the outworld for them, the majors came right out and started helping tear down the food. You did probably see a couple in the clips of them eating seeds too, but that was mostly minors. But once I got some crickets out there for them, those majors really came out and started putting in work, and just awesome stuff. I'm so happy with everything, and I'm so happy to finally be able to share it with you guys. So if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe. It means a whole lot to me, uh, especially after all the work I put into this setup. I hope that you guys enjoy it and are excited to see some more videos of it in the future, because this is really some awesome stuff, and especially like I said, as the colony gets larger, it'll be just crazy. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks.